Greetings! Tonight, I will take you to an entirely different witch house where deals and bargains can be made for your heart's desire. But would you be willing to pay the price? Everybody knows that woman is a witch. People stay away from her for the most part, but I didn't know what else to do. My parents wouldn't believe me. My older sister, you see, she's just awful to me and I don't know why. It's so unfair. I've never been anything but nice to her. She pinches me when she thinks nobody is looking. She pinches me so hard that I bruise, but when I show my mum and dad, they're not interested. They just tell me brothers and sisters always fight. She tripped me once when I was running as fast as I could and I landed on my elbows and tore the skin right off them. I was bleeding so badly and it stung so much, but she just told them it was an accident and they believed her. I decided to build her a figure, to show her that I love her. I have figures of lots of people. I make sure that I only use the ones with yellow heads, so it's fair, and I give everyone their own hairpiece and different clothes. I have a tub full of heads and arms and legs. I chose a long blonde piece for her hair, like it is in real life, and gave her the prettiest yellow head I could find. I left the arms yellow to look like the dress had no sleeves. She looked like she was going to a fancy ball. When I handed it to her, I thought for a second she was going to hug me, but then she laughed and threw it in my face. She was standing right in front of me and it hit me in the eye. It hurt a lot, so I cried, and that made everything worse. She called me a sissy and a crybaby, and told me that our parents had never wanted me, that nobody would care if I just disappeared. I picked up the figure and ran away. I could still hear her laughing behind me. I didn't really know where I was going. I felt like maybe I should just disappear if nobody wanted me around. If my own sister could hate me so much, then how did everybody else around me feel? I stopped to catch my breath and a voice asked me, "Are you having some trouble, son?" When I looked up, I realized I was standing right outside the witch's house, and she was standing right there with me, looking down at my face. I'd never seen her before. The way people talked about her, I'd always stayed clear of her house. Now that I saw her, she didn't look like a witch at all. She didn't have a long nose or a hat, and her voice wasn't creepy, it was warm. She had grey hair pinned up and wore thick glasses. Her cheeks were rosy and she was smiling at me. She looked like she could be anybody's grandma. I talked to her for a bit and told her about my sister and how she didn't like me, my parents didn't like me, and nobody else did either. She told me to hush and that it was all nonsense and gave me a hug. She smelled like she had been baking. She asked me if I'd heard the stories about her, that she was a witch. I told her I heard them but I didn't believe them, and she chuckled. "It's okay if you did," she said, and told me that it was true, and then she winked at me. "I am a witch," she said. She told me that witches weren't like the ones you see on TV or read about in books. She said that they were regular people who understood that there was magic in the world, and they could sometimes harness it, if the time was right. She told me that if I wanted, she could try and harness it for me, and use magic to help me with my sister. She had been so kind to me that I said yes, straight away, and then she took me by the hand and led me into that house I'd been avoiding for my whole life. Inside was normal, like a grandma's house. There were pictures of mountains and rivers on the walls in gold-looking frames. There were fake flowers in vases on little tables down the hall. The room we ended up in was a kitchen on one side with a sink and a cooker and pots and pans, and a living room on the other with a TV, a comfy-looking couch and a big, thick rug on the floor between them. In the middle of it all was a big dinner table that was half in the kitchen and half in the living room. There was an iron pot on it. She told me the pot was what she used to channel her magic and that it would help if we made a brew. I didn't really know what she meant, so I just nodded. She told me not to get scared, but things might get a little bit weird. All I had to do while she did what she was doing was imagine the one word I could think of that would help me with my sister. I asked her if change was a good word, and she said that it would do just nicely. She also asked me for an effigy of my sister and told me she would hang on if I had to run off and get one. I asked what an effigy was, and she said it was like an image of a person. A picture would do, she said, or sometimes people made dolls. I put my hand in my pocket and pulled out the little figure that I'd made of my sister and handed it over. "That will do just nicely too," she said. I don't think I remember everything that happened after that. It's fuzzy like it was a dream. She started putting things in the pot. Hot water, some leaves and twigs. She had a little cupboard away from the herbs and spices in the kitchen that had lots of little bottles in it, and they all had coloured liquids in them. She put some drops from some of those into the mix. I think I saw her drop some curly little hairs into the pot, but I don't know where they came from. It got dark in the room, but out of the window I could see that the sun was still shining. I could hear cats yowling like I sometimes hear outside at night. The sound was coming from all around me, but there weren't any cats in her house, I don't think. I remember her saying that she didn't have a cat. She was saying things I didn't understand, and her voice was low and growly like she was angry. My dad told me that sometimes people could be spiteful, but I didn't really understand what it meant when he tried to explain it. I still don't, but the words the lady was saying sounded what I thought something spiteful would sound like. It got darker and darker in there, and the room started to smell funny, like if someone had lit a match. I didn't like it one bit. I felt like I should run. Then I looked over at the big mirror on the wall and saw the woman's reflection in it, but she didn't look like the woman in front of me. In the mirror she was still stirring the pot, but she was naked. Her skin looked grey like the colour had been taken out of it. I looked back at the lady in the room and she was staring into the pot, stirring like crazy and with all her clothes still on. I looked back at the mirror and the naked grey lady was still stirring the pot, but she was staring right at me and grinning at me like a monster, and it was so scary that I had to scream. I don't remember getting home, but I must have, because the next thing I knew I was lying on my bed. The sun is still shining outside. I think my sister's home. My bedroom door is shut, but I can hear someone walking down the hall towards it. Their footsteps are heavy and slow and a bit scary. I can hear my sister's voice calling my name, but it's not just her voice. It sounds like 3 or 4 people, and they're all saying the same thing at the same time, but their voices are higher and lower than hers. They're getting closer. The voices are asking me if I know what I've done. I don't know if I'm dreaming. I know the figure of my sister in my pocket is real, so I grab it and I look at it, and it's not the same. It looks like it's been burned all over. The hairpiece is gone, and so were the eyes and mouth. It's just a burned, bubbly mess. There's something on it that's making my fingertips red and wet, like if a pen was leaking, but there's nothing red on the figure. I get it now. It's not just the figure. My sister has changed, and it's because I wanted her to. But I didn't mean like this. She's outside the door now, still saying my name and all those voices. She's saying thanks. She says she's coming to thank me in person. The door handle's turning,